Few games can deliver such a deep and satisfying multiplayer experience as For Honor does, but by that same measure, few games have as many small complications that kneecap the overall experience. Mechanically deep, For Honor is really satisfying to play, but drops the ball somewhat thanks to its use of peer-to-peer servers and meager currency rewards, aspects that need to be just right in a multiplayer-focused game. With its main focus being on multiplayer combat, For Honor offers an initially simple core combat system that is easy to learn but provides ridiculous depth for anyone looking to master it. The basic mechanics focus on dueling against singular opponents and gives you the simple ability to change your stance in order to fight effectively. Switching between left, right, and high stances is simple enough, and changing positions allows you to block or attack in the respective direction. At its center, For Honor is all about reading your opponent, and it uses this base as an introduction to that concept, forcing you to read your opponent's stance and attack or defend accordingly. The emphasis on reading your opponent makes For Honor almost feel like a third-person fighting game. The similarities to fighting games don't stop with the game's core idea either, as For Honor also grants players access to a number of techniques to master, from combo strings and parries to special moves and abilities unique to specific classes. Advanced techniques such as parrying are standard across all of For Honor's varied classes and reward a well-timed counterattack with the opportunity to punish opponents. Guard breaks are also available to all warriors, so if you find your enemy is blocking too much, that'll quickly knock them on their butts. Not to mention that you need to be aware of your surroundings, as you can chain from a guard break into a throw, using or falling victim to the various traps and cliffs on any given map. Where For Honor really shines though is in its specialized classes, each of whom have unique combos and abilities which further add to the already tense mind games. Of the three factions, Vikings, Knights and Samurai, each has access to 4 different classes. The Vanguard, your basic all-rounder, the Assassin, fast but frail, the Heavy, slow but powerful, and the Hybrid, utility fighters with good range. While there are tweaks that differentiate the various warriors within these classes, they all tend to operate in a similar fashion, so having a cursory knowledge of how each class plays will allow you to counter them well enough. If you want to know the ins and outs on how to counter specific warriors as effectively as possible, then you'll need to know what sets each of them apart. For example, though all heavy warriors operate as tanks with solid defense and hard-hitting attacks, the Knight's Conqueror uses a shield to give players more defensive options, while the Samurai Shugoki has an uninterruptible stance that allows them to blow straight through enemy attacks. In addition to these abilities, each warrior has their own unique combos and attacks on hand, and learning to pull these off or even cancelling out of moves can keep even the most adept player on their toes. Thankfully, there are tutorial videos and movesets available for players to check out whenever they feel up to it. The sheer variety on display within each class means that even if you find that one warrior isn't doing it for you, then there are similar options on hand that may just suit your needs. Using my previous example, I'm honestly not big on the Conqueror class, but the Shugoki is easily my favourite warrior in the game. The game's variety extends beyond the classes on offer as well. While the battlefields available to you don't have a whole lot of defining features, the game modes you can choose from are distinct and all fairly enjoyable. They all somehow achieve their own unique feel even though they use the same basic mechanics, whether it's the more focused duel or brawl modes, or the full-on Wars of the Dominion game type, which lets you wipe out waves of grunts in addition to the more deadly, player-controlled foes. The more chaotic modes with more players are obviously a little less nuanced than the straight-up one-on-one duels, but even when you find yourself outnumbered, defending yourself will eventually reward you with Revenge Mode, a mechanic that boosts your attack and defense for a limited time, evening the odds just a little. Outside of these hectic multiplayer offerings, you even have access to various training modes. The training options manage to give you a decent challenge while also providing an opportunity to practice a warrior you haven't really touched before. Thankfully, each multiplayer game type also gives you the option to play against AI characters, so if you're feeling underprepared, then you don't necessarily have to jump straight into the online fray. Even the story mode serves as a decent introduction to the basics, but unless you're playing on the harder difficulties, don't expect too much of a challenge. In fact, I wouldn't go into the campaign expecting much of a story either. Split between the 3 factions with 6 missions for each, For Honor's single-player campaign isn't particularly long, so it doesn't really outstay its welcome. On the other hand, it doesn't really offer much in terms of narrative either. The plot introduces us to Apollyon, a powerful being obsessed with war who pulls the strings of the playable faction so that war never ends. But beyond this basic setup, none of the characters are overly memorable, and the plot remains woefully thin. Thankfully, there are a couple of moments that stand out, giving the campaign some reason to exist beyond basic training. In addition to the occasional awesome moment like dodging around a charging elephant, For Honor's campaign does a great job of showing off just how stunning this game is on a visual level. That's not to say that the multiplayer isn't pretty, it's just harder to notice in all that chaos. From the varied and well-realized environments to the exceptionally fluid animations, For Honor is a surprising treat for the eyes, especially when you find yourself mowing down common soldiers or pulling off one of the game's brutal executions. The game's sound design is serviceable, as the constant clanging of steel and cries of war filling the air creates just the right atmosphere for this type of experience, but aside from some minimal thumping percussion in the background, there's not a whole lot of music to speak of. The game's voice acting similarly gets the job done, but isn't overly noticeable one way or the other. While the cries of war may have provided a decent atmosphere within the game, it was my exasperated sighs of frustration that I heard more than anything, thanks to the game's irritating use of peer-to-peer servers and the slow rate at which you could earn currency in the game. Due to the various server issues I ran into, I'm fairly sure I was sitting in the lobbies waiting for games more often than I was actually playing them. Once I was in a game, I was usually in the clear, but even then I managed to lose my connection on more than one occasion. Add to that the irritation of having to play so many games to earn even a little bit of the in-game currency, and I ended up barely wanting to pick the game up. I like earning rewards in multiplayer games, it gives me a goal to aim towards, but the game clearly limits the currency you earn in favour of adding microtransactions, which is disappointing to say the least. On top of that, the unlockables on offer aren't anything particularly thrilling anyway, so I found myself wondering why I was even bothering. If you're going into For Honor solely for the glory of battle, then assuming you can make it as far as the battlefield, I think you'll like what you see. The game has as much depth as a fighting game, and its visuals are certainly impressive. However, its inconsistent matchmaking and general microtransaction grossness left me feeling just a little disappointed, and its single-player offerings did little to impress. Definitely worth checking out if you're on the hunt for a solid multiplayer title, but otherwise it's hard to give a full recommendation.